Welcome back to Stroke Warrior Radio, to all my stroke survivors, stroke warriors, TBI survivors everywhere. I'm your host, Ralph Cortese. Today we're honored, really, to have Tania Says, a stroke survivor, facilitator, artist, and advocate based in New York City, or in New York, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tanya's journey began in 2020 when she experienced an ischemic stroke that was misdiagnosed, as many of us have gone through, followed days later by a hemorrhagic stroke. I actually can talk about this a little bit, but I'm going to let her talk about it all. Tanya, welcome to the show. Let's start by going back to the beginning of your journey.
Thank you so
You
much,
met
Ralph, for having me.
Oh, it's as I said, it's an honor. I love the work that you do. Your blogs are fabulous, and some of your art is pretty cool. Um, can you walk us through the day of your stroke first, your ischemic stroke anyway?
Yes, of course. So it really started out pretty normal. We got up early, we had some plans. And then out of nowhere, I saw a flash of light in my right eye, kind of like lightning. And then I just felt a little bit off, I'd say. I thought maybe I was getting I used to get a long time ago migraines with aura. So I thought maybe I was getting a migraine. I told my daughter, hey, I'm feeling kind of, not right. I'm going to go lay down, get yourself ready to go. So I was kind of just thinking, this too shall pass. Um, I would say within 10 minutes or so, my arm was tapping against my body. My left arm was tapping against my body, and then it was kind of moving on its own. And right after that, I started asking my daughter, Maya, where's my arm? So I had no idea where my arm was. I didn't know where my hand was. And I remember her saying, Mom, don't you feel me holding your hand? And I just kept saying, where is my arm? Where is it? Like I didn't have any idea where it was. I stood up and then I just kind of collapsed to the ground. And I know that's when they called 911.
Oh, you did call, good.
Yes.
And what happened there at the hospital? You said you were misdiagnosed?
Yeah. So it started with the paramedics. They actually kept yelling at me to stop moving my arm. And I kept telling them I wasn't actually doing that it was happening on its own. And it was during COVID. They asked me, do you want to go to the hospital? And I said yes, because I didn't really understand anything that was going on. And they told my daughter she didn't have to come with us, that it was probably a panic attack, and that she could just meet us at the hospital later. And since we were house sitting, she wanted to like secure the animals that we were taking care of. And she figured, based on what the paramedics told her, she was 19, that I would call her once I got to the hospital. And that's not what happened because I was having a stroke. So once I got to the hospital, I honestly don't have a lot of memories. I eventually came to find out that I was going to be having surgery. And at that point, even though I had a phone with me, I didn't use it for hours. So I got to the hospital, Ralph, around 7 in the morning, and the ER doctor favored a complex migraine. So he did not call a stroke alert. So I went he did order a CT, but it took 3.5 hours to get that CT for them to find out that I was actually having a stroke. So by that time, I was out of the window for meds. They did, like I said, I kind of came to this realization that I was having surgery. And I mean, I love my daughter, and my mom instinct was like, oh my gosh, she's going to come to the hospital, not know where I am, not be able to find me, and she's going to be scared. And I kept asking for her over and over again the entire time. It's the only thing I remember really doing it like repeatedly was, where is Maya here? Where is my daughter? So I made a phone call like at that point, and I called my sister-in-law. How I got to do that, and I was speaking nonsense, as I was being wheeled through a hospital to an OR.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
I handed the phone up to whoever was wheeling me, who explained what was happening. And probably around that same time, my daughter did receive a phone call from a nurse letting her know your mom's having a stroke and we're taking her to surgery. But up until that point, no one had reached out to any of my family.
Wow. And what kind of surgery did you have to go through?
They tried a manual thrombectomy,
Okay.
um, but they failed. They weren't able to, the clot was too far deep by the point that they tried. So they had 4 failed attempts to remove the clot.
Was that after the first stroke or after the hemorrhagic? The hemorrhagic was a few days later, right?
Yeah, that was after, that was like in the day, the morning of, I would say they found out that they realized I was having a stroke around 10:30. Then they had like a neuro consult, blah blah blah. I went into surgery probably around 1 p.m. that day.
Okay.
And then I woke up in the ICU. So the thrombectomy was for the ischemic stroke to try to remove the clot. And then because the clot never got removed, and I think as part of like what is normal course of treatment, I was put on a blood thinner. There's a risk there for hemorrhagic conversion, which was the brain bleed that I had.
And that's what happened a few days later. Okay.
Yeah.
I have pretty much the same story with the paramedics, by the way. He asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital also, and I had went to bed the night before. I took some ibuprofen, figured I'll get over this. And he asked me if I had to go to the hospital. I said, "Who the hell wants to go to the hospital? Do I have to?" And he said,
Mm-hmm.
"No, you've already had your stroke," and he left.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I wound up calling another ambulance 3 hours later. Anyway, um, less than a week later, the hemorrhagic conversion. What do you remember hemorrhagic conversion? What do you remember from that period, and how did you cope with the uncertainty you were going through?
Um, so we found out that my brain was bleeding overnight. It was like I was uncomfortable during the day. But I was wearing I had longish hair. I couldn't use my left hand, so I was using headbands to get them like off my, the hair out of my face. So I thought maybe like the headband was too tight or it was uncomfortable, but I had like an uncomfortableness on my face. And I remember it was like around like it was like overnight, the funny part for those people who've not been in a hospital chronically for a long period of time or with neurological things, you get woken up every what, like 3 hours, 4 hours to make
Yeah.
sure you're okay. And you're like, rest would be nice, but that's impossible. So it was like during like one of those wee hours of the night neuro checks that I said to the nurse, "It's really loud in here. My pillow is making a lot of noise," which doesn't sound like a good thing, right? So she was like, what are you talking about?" I said, "I don't know, like this on the side of my face, like I just like I hear all of this noise." And she went and got a doctor. I got taken to like, a like midnight CT scan, and that's where they saw that I had a brain bleed. So
Yeah,
um
so many of us go through bad medical advice, I want to say, or I, it sounds like you had some good doctors, some bad doctors, some bad nurses. I mean, what did that do to you? I mean, and your daughter
um
must have been terrified.
yeah, I will say the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard was the 911 call that she made, because I did hear the recording, and to hear how scared she was and how like, terrified her voice was in making that phone call. Um, for myself, I feel like a lot of what was happening, I was too like kind of confused about. So even so, all right, I have a brain bleed. Now they're like, okay, we're going to put you back in the ICU. I'd already been in the ICU for almost a week. So we're going to put you back there and we're going to watch you. And then I met with a neurosurgeon because there was a possibility that I was going to have brain surgery. And then they were going to schedule an MRI the following morning. That was kind of like, so overnight, it was just kind of like, okay, now they're waking you up every hour to check,
Mhm.
how you're doing. And I just remember kind of just being like, just waiting. I mean, I don't think I was scared because I don't think I don't think there was anything I could do. So I just had to kind of wait until the morning to do this MRI. And then we would know what was going to have to happen. And thankfully, the MRI showed that the bleed had happened, but it wasn't still bleeding. So they didn't have to intervene. I mean, I don't know, maybe they should have. Okay, let's be back to your good doctor,
Yeah,
bad doctor advice. What I was told was, since it stopped bleeding on its own, there was no intervention needed. I don't know. You just have to kind of, you're in the ICU. You're kind of going with what they tell you, right? Like you don't know.
do you think it made, I was by myself. I was living alone out of state, from way away from any family. Did it help at all that you had family there? Or, I mean, I know I was confused, but it also created a big anger. So I had a real difficult time listening to people or wanting to even listen to people. Did, what are some of the emotions that you had to deal with, and maybe new stroke survivors should know that they're going to wind up dealing with?
I think, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that on your own because it is something that it's a little bit unreal that we expect people who've had a brain injury, right? Because it's an acquired brain injury, to somehow step up and understand a lot of complicated things that we're being told. So I had family with me once I woke up from the ICU. Like at that point, I did have people with me. Um, thank God, right? Because they're the ones who actually figured out what had happened. Like I didn't realize that I waited almost, 4 hours for a CT. They're the ones who could advocate for me more strongly than I could. So I think that if you have the ability to have someone there with you to support you, and let them and lean into them, that's a really important thing. But know that it is overwhelming and it is confusing, and that I want to say that's okay. Like, I don't think anyone should
Yeah,
be really hard on themselves because, like I think we as stroke survivors, need to model the patience and grace that we need others to give us. And it really starts with us to kind of be a little bit easier on ourselves. And that starts at the beginning because it can be like, it's a lot. It's very I think the best emotion I would say is overwhelming. There's
yeah.
just so many different things that you have to kind of like deal with, accept, figure out. Like it's 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 juggling when you don't know how to juggle anymore.
Well, and I guess the lesson I learned, and my daughter did come a couple days later, but is to ask for that help. A lot of us aren't in a position to really realize we need to ask for help. That's kind of hard to understand, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay to ask for help. I think we see
Yeah,
asking for help as weakness, but actually being able to ask for help is a real sign of, I would say, I'd reverse that and say it's a real sign of strength.
exactly. Exactly. I agree totally. After leaving the hospital, what were your first steps in rehab? Did you leave the
So
hospital or to go into inpatient?
so I was actually, so I'm from New York, but I was actually in Colorado when I had my stroke.
Oh, okay.
COVID had kind of like chilled out a little bit here, and my daughter was in Colorado, so we went out to, like, just kind of do the mom check on you, make sure you're okay, see your face kind of thing. And that's where I was when I had the stroke. So after 20 days in the hospital, I did have to fight really hard for acute rehab. They wanted to release me, but I was, at that time when I had the stroke, I was living in a hotel. So I really had to count on people. I mean, I use social media. I'll be honest. I put, on Facebook, does anyone have any experience with insurance companies? Because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And thankfully, I had some friends who stepped up in various ways. And the one phrase that I heard that for me was important to advocate with was that I didn't have a safe discharge, because they just wanted to send me home. And I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't live here. And they were coming up with all kinds of plans. They were like, oh, we can get you airfare. I was like, you want to put me on a plane? I just had a stroke. Would you be willing to take a train? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I mean, literally, they were really trying very hard to find ways to get me out of this hospital. And I did what my dog does. My dog is one of those, like, we go for a walk, and when she doesn't want to walk anymore, she just plants her butt down, and you're like, we're not moving. I kind of did that in the hospital. I just sort of was like, no, like, I'm not leaving. I refuse to be discharged, because it wasn't safe. And then I had to really push them on finding the right people to do the appeal for insurance. And eventually I got 10 days of outpatient approved. So what was important for me there was, I think that, if I had just left the hospital, I would have been afraid of everything. And I would have been
Exactly.
scared to move. I would have been scared to fall. I mean, I still was scared of all those things, but those 10 days, they gave me confidence, because they push you in acute rehab. They're no joke there. And they make you do things like, I'm thinking they're crazy. Like, what are you asking me to do? And then you kind of sit back and you go, okay, wait, they don't want to fill out the insurance paperwork if I fall down. They're not going to make me do something that I'll get hurt, right? Because that's worse for them. So then you kind of say, okay, if you have faith in me, why don't I have faith in myself? And that was a turning point to really being able to, like, take a step backwards, or like, you want me to do this with my eyes closed? Sure, let's try. And I came out, I think, a wee bit more confident in what I was going to possibly be able to do with my life, myself and my body. And then I stayed another month in Colorado doing outpatient rehab, PT, OT, and speech, because I wanted
Okay.
to know before I came home, what was I able to do for myself. I wanted to have that understanding of, like, kind of like, what could I do before I, probably got wrapped in bubble wrap and kept safe by my family.
That was great insight. You've spent a number of years in occupational, physical, cognitive, and vision therapy. What do you, and do you still go through any therapies?
I still go to vision therapy. I go at this point every 2 weeks. It's been
Okay.
really helpful because I didn't lose, and I don't know, how your sight or your hearing were impacted, but I didn't lose sight, and I actually didn't lose any hearing, but I don't understand what I see and I can't understand what I hear. So I lost processing on both sides.
Okay.
And that creates, interesting situations. So the vision therapy has been helpful beyond, just opening my sight. Like, I feel like it's been 4 years of therapy, and this is the year when I'm finally able to, like, hold my head up and make eye contact with people. I've spent 4 years looking down and making sure I didn't trip over something, or, struggle, because sustaining eye contact is really complicated in a lot of ways. And maybe I was afraid to talk to people to some degree as well.
Well, I was embarrassed to go out. I mean, I was grateful for the COVID home shopping, where that all started. And when I did, I was embarrassed to ride that wheelchair, the shopping cart wheelchair, you know. So yeah, you go through a bunch of mental, emotional, and physical obstacles. What was that like for you that you faced early on, and how'd you deal with it?
um, I think, like what you were talking about earlier, where it's hard to ask for help, like those tools that we can use, like, literally to lean on, having a cane. I think we're conditioned that we want to get past this thing because we want to get rid of that support thing that we have, right? Because that means we're better. Um, and I think understanding when and where these tools still matter and can make a difference. Because if I want to get back to whatever my new normal is, right? Like, whatever this life is, whatever it looks like, I need to be able to rely on things that can help me, get there or be there so that I can enjoy that part of life. So if that means that having a cane with me at a concert, in case I have to be standing for any period of time, is going to help me be at that event, then it's worth it. It's kind of like, I'm not, you know, I know I feel like with non-visible disabilities also, which a lot of times with stroke, like there are the physical disabilities, but there's also like the non-visible things people don't see. Um, I like I could potentially walk in an airport, but I can't do that because I don't have feeling on my left side, right? So people touching me, I won't even realize they're touching me until they're touching me. It would become such a mental nightmare to get through a space like that, that I would be exhausted by the time I made it through, and I wouldn't be proving anything to anyone. So I make the wheelchair reservation. I'm like, this is going to help me. So I get to the airplane and I get out wherever I'm traveling to, and I'm not a piece of luggage myself, right? Like we're just being dragged
Right.
out. So I think we have to kind of forego how we, like what might be difficult, like try to change the perspective just enough to say like, but if this is helping me, can I handle that other piece of it? But
Yeah.
I think it's very valid. I mean, it is very valid and fair that we are like, we're different. We don't want to be different, right? We want to just be who we were before. We want to just blend in and be normal. Whatever normal is, in society, it's a lot of pressure, I think, when you're recovering.
Yeah. And there's, we all have stroke recoveries that are similar, but so different too. I mean, I agree with you. I still do the wheelchair because I still have crowd anxiety,
Hmm.
which I've never had before. So, I mean, you just have to open your mind, I guess, to recognize these little things that affect you and figure out your own solutions sometimes. Did you go through some mental health issues with all of this or
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I think we all do, right?
yeah,
um,
well,
I do,
even
I
normals,
still,
right?
right. I do see a therapist weekly, and I think that I was very lucky to find somebody who specializes in chronic illness. That was something that was very, I think, an important part of her experience. And she is a neuropsychologist, so she understands kind of the cognitive piece of this as well. Um, and it's been one of the most valuable tools, especially because, and she posed this question to me at first, like, how much of your identity is now having had a stroke? Because I think at first when we're really at the beginning of the journey, it's, it kind of becomes all about the stroke, right? We have to figure
Yeah,
out
it's all
so many
consuming. Yeah.
different things, and then slowly you kind of start to wonder, who am I, right? And what this year was my 5-year stroke anniversary in August. It's been 5 years since my stroke. And at the beginning of the year, I was like, I'm going to start wearing real clothes, because for 5 years, I've looked like I'm either going to physical therapy or a gym, like, because a physical therapy gym is a gym. So I was like, I'm going to wear actual clothes because you know what? Why not? That was like my big goal at the beginning of the year. And then I said, I don't even know how I like to dress anymore. Right. Because
Yeah.
I stopped wearing jeans because I couldn't button or zip, and now I'm like, oh, I just pull pants on now. I'm like a 4-year-old. But, kind of thinking like, what's my identity here? Who am I now? Because you become, you're more than just your stroke. It'll always be part of the story. But then what's the rest of the story? And you kind of start to wonder, what does that look like?
Yeah, what do I want to be?
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. You had a big turning point in 2023. Tell us about that.
I'm assuming you're talking about my concussion.
Yes, I am.
um, yeah. So I was doing really well that day. I was having a great day. I felt the best I had felt since my stroke. It was May of 23. And I remember that morning I went to the gym to try I think it was a bar class. And then the ladies were so nice and they talked me into staying for Pilates. And I was like, I did that. And I had like this wonderful day of like being physically strong in my body, and I felt great. And then that night, we were in a class for my dog. Stevie Nicks is my service dog, and we were taking a canine good citizenship class. It's like an AKC class where they test the dog and, make sure that they're like civilized, to be in public. And we're doing our laps around with other dogs, you know, kind of coming the other direction and blah, blah, blah. And she did a great job of just minding her business. So I leaned down to give her a treat and I leaned into a metal ladder. So I was moving forward, downward, and I just smacked the entire front of my head against it.
Hmm.
And I dropped to a knee. And I remember there were quiet tears coming down my face. And I was like, oh my God, like that really, 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 like, you know, took a minute to get off of the floor. Walk back. My partner was there because he's the one who had driven us. I was like, did you hear that? He goes, yeah, what did you do? Bang your arm? Because that's usually what I would do. And I was like, no, that was my head. And he was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, no, no, I'm okay. And class was over anyway. So we leave. And as soon as we get into the car, I start to ugly cry. I'm like hysterical, like having a panic attack because I am so overwhelmed because it was a pretty hard hit. And I was like, let's just go home. Let's just go home. Um, and we did. And he was eating something and I was sitting on the couch and I just was within 15, 20 minutes, massive headache, throwing up. And I was like, yay, let's go to the hospital. Which, you know, it's like the last thing I feel like anybody who has had any kind of medical trauma wants to do. You're right. It's like, you know, please don't make me go to a hospital. So
Yeah.
we did. And they did a CT because of my history and being on blood thinners. And they wanted to be sure that I didn't have a brain bleed. So
Right.
thankfully, none of that, but I had a concussion. And I'm the mom of a student athlete. And, you know, in high school, my daughter played a lot of sports and was concussed. So I'm like a junior orthopedist and neurologist for her. So I knew, okay, we want it to be like not so much light, and we want to quiet down, and we want to like keep things a little chill. So I gave myself a concussion protocol, and I basically was like, all right, well, no phone, no computer, no TV. So I just kind of hung out outside and it was beautiful weather and I had my dog and then like the next day I was bored and I was like, okay, I can't, all right, this is good, I should do all of this, but now what am I going to do? And I had art materials from a class that got canceled and I was like, hey, I have that stuff, I'm gonna go mess around and just kind of do something, and I started painting.
It's a perspective shift, finding something new, isn't it?
It is. I mean, in fairness, I did go to art school, but I never painted. I don't like two-dimensional. I was a three-dimensional like sculptor. I worked with my hands, but I never did any of that post-stroke because of the limitations in my left hand. So
Right.
I just kind of was like, yeah, no, I don't make art because like art I make, you know, I can't do. So yeah, suddenly I was like, oh, I'm gonna just, you know, and it's I mean, it is still it's simple and complicated all at the same time, but I just started painting shapes. I didn't, you know, I don't paint anything like that you would be like, oh, that looks like your house. No, it's like it's all very abstract. It's all very much mindful in the moment. And I just play with colors and lines and shapes. And that's what it was. So it kept it very
Yeah.
kind of easy for my brain. I didn't plan anything. I just kind of like went with the flow.
Yeah. Well, and I like it and what I've seen of it. I like it because it shows me the cognitive changes that you're going through. I mean, the way they develop over time is just slays me because it shows the recovery that's becoming so miraculous for you. And how has that art helped you express your recovery journey and process any setbacks?
Um, I think like it's funny, you know, I'm like, when I hear a question I haven't thought about, I'm like, oh, that's a good question, Ralph. I mean, I've only recently started, I think, processing the journey through art, where I've been painting some brains and I've been doing some things that are representative of my journey. Um, and it's interesting because it unlocks a lot of thinking and it unlocks like a lot of kind of, I think, again, back to that medical trauma, we we lock things away and sometimes we do a really good job of locking it away. So, and letting it out is like, kind of, my therapist isn't very good at, I'm like really good at keeping the door locked. She tries really hard. But I think in making the art and just kind of like sitting with, I'll never forget the first person that was a really, I think, callous human being who came into my um hospital room, and she's like, oh, blah, she's talking, and she's like, oh, have you seen any of your scans, like your brain scans? I was like, no. So she's like pulling up the file, and she has her back to me. I can't see what's on the screen. And I hear her say, wow, you sure look better than your scans. And I'm like, what? Like, what does that
Well,
mean?
yeah, what is that?
And I guess from her perspective and seeing the, like, whatever the amount, the damage or whatever in my brain, um, like the expectation wouldn't be that I would be functioning so well or whatever. I mean,
Right.
I didn't even have the ability to like ask her to pick, because it was just, I was like, who says that to someone who they've just met? I didn't know her. She wasn't my doctor or my nurse. She was a random lady who showed up to say a lot of weird things to me out of nowhere. And so I've always sat with that idea that, like, oh, I look better than my scan. So I think for that reason, as I started to look into like what would be maybe related to my journey, I've just been painting brains, like my brain. I have like my MRI, and like I kind of take the shape of where, like, that like big white spot is, and I fill it with different things. And I just kind of have been playing with that imagery, just to kind of maybe make that image look like better than me. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm just playing with it. I'm just trying to make it
How it
something.
looks better than your, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Right.
is
Wow, your
that?
scans look better than you.
How did you first discover Love Your Brain programs?
It's so funny. I don't even remember. I feel like it may have been in the acute rehab where someone mentioned it. And then um September, October, November, like 6 months later, I remembered that someone mentioned something, and I don't know how you were, but when people would say things, it's like in one ear, out the other, but I would write things down. And then I would
Yes.
randomly find them later without any idea of why I wrote it down or what it meant. But then you're like, God, we have Google, we have Alexa, we have people who help us, in the virtual world. So I found a scribble that said "Love Your Brain." I was like, oh, what is this? And I did one of their mindfulness programs. And I remember when my brother Alan passed away from a glioblastoma brain tumor. And while he was going through his cancer treatment, he leaned into mindfulness a lot. And I didn't even know what that really meant. He was just very much like, I need my cassette. I mean, this is, we're old cassette CDs, right? I need the tape. I need my mindfulness audio. And I just remember, I never asking about what it was or how. I just knew that it was helping him. So I just made sure he always had it when he needed it. So learning about mindfulness was something that took time. Like learning the concepts behind it. It's nothing, it's not scary or huge. It just, it's new, right? And with my brain injury, like I have old memories intact, but learning new things was really hard. Um, but I remember being almost like, in addition to finding community and hearing other people talk and say, oh, like I am not alone in like how I feel, like other people actually have these struggles also. It was the facilitator. She had a brain injury. And I was like, how is she doing this? Like, wait, I was so taken aback. I'm like, she's listening to 8 people talk, and she's able to like, like repeat things back. And she had such an amazing skill set that was a lot of what I lost. So I was very much like, I want to be like her one day. One day I want to be able to like be like to the point where I can actually like do this for other people. Um,
You have, right?
I've been very lucky. Yeah. I used it as a motivator in like the cognitive rehab and like getting those executive functioning skills. Like if I was looking at what I wanted, that was like, I wanted to be able to do that. And I use that as a guide as to like, creating like the motivation to like work hard at those, because people, I didn't know, did you know that you have to relearn how to think?
Yeah.
Like
I didn't know
that's
that.
yeah, that they're actual doctors who like teach you how to think again. Like that was a mystery to me. And it took a long time to find somebody who was like skilled at doing it and like I could get that therapy. But that's what I used as my goal, was to become like a mindset facilitator.
What does it mean to you to hold space for other survivors through mindset and retreat programs as a facilitator?
Um, that I cannot even begin to put into words. It's such a, I think, similar to what you do here in holding space for survivors. Um, it is fulfilling beyond words. Um, that I can give someone's voice a place to land where they feel seen and heard, where I can connect people. Um, it's just really it's what everyone who is going through this kind of a journey needs, even if they don't know it yet. So, just having a way to do that, um, and you know, being just I think very lucky to um people to have people who kind of let me be part of their lives and their journey.
How do you hope your work with Love Your Brain inspires or supports other survivors? And let's add caregivers as well.
I i would say if folks feel less alone in that caregiver role as the person who's had a brain injury, if they can feel connected to something bigger, um, and understand that the load that they're carrying is very heavy, but that there are others who could maybe offset the weight of that load a little bit. Um, so if I can give someone that, understanding that they can walk away from and like own that, I'll be honest with you, I have recently had people reach out to me that I've met on retreat, to stay connected. And I feel so humbled that they have found that our connection, that, my experience can help them. And it really feels like if one person is helped by what I've gone through, as lousy of an experience as I may have had, in many ways, medically speaking, I feel like then there's such value in it because someone else maybe can learn something that like avoids going through that harder path. Like if I can make the path easier for anyone, then my hard path feels like it was worth it because at least there was learning and someone else can have something, can take something away from it that helps them.
I love that. I really do. It's so hard to find people like that that care that much. Um, and I just love your resilience and how you keep helping people. I want to jump to another topic real quick before we start wrapping up. I want to talk about your brother Alan, if that's okay. He was kind of your superhero. Can you share his story and how his resilience continues to guide you?
Um, yeah, yeah. So I'm the youngest of four, three older brothers. Alan was our middle brother. And um, he was like my mentor. He was the person that if I had a question, he was the guy. Like I would call him. My daughter was 4 when I got divorced, and he didn't have kids at the time, and he stepped into that like role of being there for her dance recitals, for everything. He was like that person. Um, and he showed up. He always showed up for you. So, in losing him, I really struggled. It was like time, Maya was 16, um, going through high school, when she got accepted into college, I was like, God, he would be so proud. Like all of these
Yeah.
moments where I was like, he would just be so excited about this, or look at what we're doing. Like the morning of my stroke, the reason we got up that early was our intention was to go from Denver out to Boulder to go on a hike because it was the day before the anniversary of his passing. So we were actually going out to go sit on some earth and look out at like the beauty, because that was what he loved to do, national parks and all of that. So that's what we were headed to do. That was our goal that day. But I remember crying at one point in like an MRI because I was like overwhelmed and like it's claustrophobic. And then thinking, gosh, he never ever complained about any of his treatment. He underwent so many scans and and he never said anything negative. And I just remember thinking, like, I know I have him with me. I carry him with me in my heart always. And now I felt like I had him with me in a different way. And to really kind of just be that inspiration, and it's not about, and I don't see it as about being strong. It's just about kind of, um, he was a MacGyver, right? So he always had a way to figure something out. So when he had strokes while he was going through his cancer, and truthfully, I was on the, we split up, right? I think when you have someone in your family who's going through something chronic, you kind of like figure out who can do the best job at what. I could not do the best job at medical, and I could not do the best job at kind of staying on top of like symptoms and this and that. I could do the best job at being there for my brother, right? I could do the best job at being present, making sure he got to go and sit out by the beach when he wanted to, have like, pancakes behind everybody's back. Like that was my job, right? And I just remember feeling like I have him now kind of guiding me and feeling like, you can do this. Like you are stronger than I feel like that's the sentiment that I took away from observing his relationship with his illness, and just then seeing like I had a lot of like I wonder what it was like when he did this, or when this happened to him. And I remember with one of his strokes he had word finding issues, um and just how everybody was reacting to that. And I was like, why are you guys playing this guessing game? The guy's getting super frustrated. Like, let's just relax. So I don't know. I feel like he definitely kind of, I think, gives me that like whisper of like, just be patient, just it's okay, just slow down.
Yeah. Would you kind of, this may be, it's hard for me to even figure out how to ask it. What are the attributes you've learned from that relationship that maybe a new stroke survivor or TBI survivor should be aware of, that they might want to look at? I hope I asked that right, but
Um, well, of the relationship with my brother, um, I Alan was like the perfect balance of being a big brother that was like looking out for you, but not necessarily judging you,
okay.
letting you learn. And I would say in this journey, there's a lot we have to learn about ourselves. And it's important to have the space. So caregivers are going to want to protect us, as they should. And we should also, be mindful, like, hey, if we're being told, hey, that's a little bit dangerous, be aware. But like, it's kind of finding that balance where you can take the risks to grow, and kind of learning
Yeah,
to trust each other, and trust yourself. Um, so I don't know if that really answers the question, but it's kind of just redefining
it
the
does for me.
relationship. Okay.
Yeah, it does for me. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's kind of these are the attributes that I've gained from that relationship, and this is what's guiding my recovery, and that's beautiful to me. You identify as a neurodivergent artist, from what I've read, an advocate for embracing imperfection, which is very curious. What message do you want to share with survivors about redefining identity after brain injury?
Goes back to being able to wear clothes that are not gym clothes. We started that way.
I did that for about
Um,
5 years.
yeah, that I think I'd say, let's see. I so the perfection and imperfection um goes back to my art making, right? Where I had, I know that a lot of times people are like, they're looking for the lines to match and they want to see the symmetry. And I'm not able to give you that, right? That's not what I can provide anybody. So rather than looking at what I was making as perhaps not being right or not being perfect, I just decided that whatever I was making was right by virtue of it being made. So if the lines don't add up, or if the spacing is a little bit weird, sometimes when I look at my patterns, I can tell when I got tired. I can say, "Oh wow, look how controlled that was," and like, "Oh, got tired right over there. They get a little weird." Other people won't notice that. I notice it, but I don't dwell on it. I look at it and I laugh and I say, you know what? Next time, start that pattern when your brain's a little fresher. But I think that it's very easy to get down on ourselves when we're recovering and like get frustrated because like I could tie my shoe yesterday, but why can't I tie it today? And like, or, I put my shirt on and I button my buttons like all cockeyed. Like those are all things that can easily become frustrating. And actually, I think where I would encourage stroke survivors to focus is like, could you even button your shirt when you first had your stroke? Like I know I couldn't tie a shoe. The first day I tied a shoe, I was like, woohoo. And guess what? Like
Yeah,
then I was tired after tying that first shoe that I could finally eventually tie. And there's a author, she's actually I think she's like a neuroscientist, Jill Bolt Taylor, and she wrote My Stroke of Insight. And she
yeah,
talks about enjoying, like, celebrating that the something you could do today that you couldn't do yesterday. And she doesn't define what that is, right? So literally, if you could do something today that you couldn't do yesterday, take a moment and be proud of yourself. And I think that was probably um I had started to look at things that I could do for the first time. Like in my blog, I was doing that. And then I heard her speak and I was like, this is what I've been doing. I'm so proud of myself. Like, good, let's keep doing that. And let's keep noticing those things that, like, oh, like, oh, wow, that's like the first time you were able to, you know, do your hair, or the first time you were able to like make lunch, whatever it is. The first time I remember being in ICU and the first time I was able to lift my arm,
yeah,
and we're a society, we're like, wait, great, you can lift your arm, now you have to do this. Or you're walking, so now you've got to walk further. Like, just take it easy, folks. Like, just
yeah.
that little thing is huge, and it's
Well, the
okay.
small victories every day, those imperfections lead to learning. I
Yes.
mean, you just have to get to the mindset, I guess, at least I did, that to recognize, oh, look at that. I couldn't do that yesterday. This is
Hmm.
pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about your stroke of luck and your Instagram at Stroke Maven. What kinds of stories, reflections do you share there?
So my website, my daughter helped me build that so that I could just kind of process some things. And that was before I started actually making art. So I was more, trying to let things flow out through blogs and stuff. Um, but I try to just kind of reflect on like day-to-day life. It's just life is like full of ups, downs, in betweens, and I just try to kind of reflect on that. I've got some of my art on there. I do have resources that have made a big difference in my stroke recovery, that I shout out, just because I know some things I had trouble finding people to help me with certain things. And then my Instagram is really, I think, where I would say most strongly I advocate, where I try to address things like raising awareness around stroke symptoms, like, and making sure people know the difference between symptoms in men and women, or um, just myths about stroke, like it's not
Yeah.
just, it's not just for old people, like, kind of like things we think about because of the way the media portrays a stroke. It's not exactly what it is in real life. So I try to use that as a platform for like the work that I've done with Love Your Brain, the work I do with the American Heart Association. So my Instagram is kind of that space.
If a listener is feeling isolated in their recovery, what encouragement would you give them today?
I don't think it would be responsible to say you're not alone, especially if you're feeling isolated. So the encouragement would be to connect with other survivors, because, and even listening to this station, this is listening to other people who have gone through a journey, and it may not be, they say, right, like every stroke's different. That's why we can't give you any resources when we let you go. But at the same time, yes, every stroke is different, but then there are also all of these similarities that we share.
Yeah.
And I think once people realize that piece of it, it feels a little less alone. But I would say, find community. It's out there. And if you're struggling to connect to a community and you want some ideas, my contact information will be with this episode. I'm
Wonderful.
I'm willing and happy to help somebody who's feeling alone.
Little fun to end our conversation. What's a favorite song that always lifts your spirits?
Um, I remember being in Spain and taking an Uber super early. This was when I was working and traveling. And it was like the Uber guy was playing Queen, and it was 7 a.m. And I was like, what? This is so much happening right now. Then I was like, how could you have a bad day if you start your morning with Queen? So I'm going to go with Don't Stop Me Now.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one. Cool. What's one tool, resource, or practice you can't live without?
Earplugs.
Yeah, I noticed you. Have you been wearing those?
Well,
That,
these are this is just, I think so. Make sure that the audio is good, but I wear earplugs everywhere. I have all kinds, but the world is a very loud place. I'm very sensitive to noise and sound.
oh,
So I always have earplugs with me. And if I'm going any public space, it cuts down all of that white noise. So yeah, for sure.
coffee, tea, or something else to fuel your mornings.
Coffee. First we
Okay.
coffee and then we conquer. Yes, coffee
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. I drink my little 5 cup maker and that it sets me up. If you could give one sentence of advice to your younger self right before your stroke, what would it be?
It's more than a sentence, but I recently learned there's a study that was published that links pregnancy risks with future risk for stroke. So preeclampsia, for example, was a complication I had during my pregnancy. And in this study, they found that women with preeclampsia during pregnancy have a 40% higher risk of stroke under the age of 50. And I would tell my younger self, because I wish someone had told me to go see a cardiologist and just to be aware that there is this risk. It's not, my stroke was caused by, I had a PFO, I had a hole in my heart, and I had a clotting disorder. So I had perfect storm of those two things. But had I been to a cardiologist because of this, we would have found the PFO. And I would have that probably closed, maybe avoided. I mean, I don't like to do the maybes because maybe anything could have happened.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that, women know that there are certain risks, pregnancy complications that can increase your risk for stroke later. And it's something that I'm hoping we start to talk about more. So that's kind of what I would tell my younger self. Go see a
That's,
cardiologist.
that's why I love doing this, because what we're doing is there's always something to learn about our recovery, awareness about having a stroke, the be fast, all that stuff. But something like this preeclampsia information, I mean, there's always something to learn. So it's so important to reach out to other survivors, I think. Anything you want to add today?
I just want to thank you. You and I have been like chasing each other a little bit,
I
right, to get
know,
our
right?
timing down. But I am so appreciative of what you provide for the community. This has been a lovely conversation, and I'm
Yeah.
just really thankful to have had the time together today. And yeah, I appreciate you.
Tanya, thank you for sharing your powerful story of resilience, creativity, and advocacy with us. To our listeners, remember, your story matters. Your recovery is worth fighting for, and you're never alone on this path. Catch the wave. You are a warrior achieving victories every day. Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, Rob.